Hey, this is Yazuki Wolf, and today we're going to be doing Japan Quest Episode 6. First off, just like to apologize for taking so long to get this up, but as a little quick plug and just to kind of let you know what I've been up to, I'll just show you that I've been busy working on getting this made. This is Arcatype, my new tabletop game. Well, I designed it, but it belongs to the company I work for. But anyways, we just debuted it in Japan about 2 weeks ago, I think. And we've been working to get it on Amazon and stuff here, and I'm also translating it into English so that we can debut it in America at Indianapolis Gen Con, August 14th to 17th, I believe. So if you're going to be in that area, please come by, you can check it out. I'll put some information description below. We have a Facebook fan page too, you can go to get updates about the game. Also, we're going to have a mobile version of the game in about a year, so first in iOS and then hopefully in Android following soon after. It's basically like a tactics, it's sort of like a strategy card game cross a hexagonal board tactical game. No, I'm fairly pleased with it. I still want to improve a lot of things. I'm hoping I could get some stuff cleared out for before the American release. Try to make it as good as I can. And we're also going to try to make some different expansion sets and things. So if you wanted to come to the Facebook page, I'd be thrilled to get some comments and advice or feedback on different parts of the game. But I don't want to go too much into that in this video, because this video today is Japan Quest Episode 6, in which we will be talking about well, what I did while I was at school. The last video I talked about the experience of going to the manga school. This video I'm going to talk more about the work that I did and also the publishers I went to visit. Specifically today, I would like to talk about my experience at Jump. That was the first publisher I actually went to visit. But before I get to that, let me just show you this. This is most of what I did during the 2 years that I was doing manga. So that's a lot of stuff. I think I probably did more than at least 100 pages of manga while I was in the school. And actually this is actually before the school. This is before I went to the school. I had this little vampire story that I was working on. And now this I never finished. The reason being that, well, let's see here, right now, these are the last chapter that I was working on. Let's see, this is page 72 is where I stopped. And part of that is because, well, first off, before I had it like this, I was actually doing it in the computer, and I was using limited color. I was doing gradations and stuff. I think I was doing tricolor, so there was 3 colors that I would use, and I would use different gradations and stuff like that. And then I went to the open houses of all the different schools, and I found out that you can't do that in Japan. If you want to be published, you have to just do black and white. I think I may have mentioned that in a different video. So after that, I started doing the new chapters all in black and white. And so that was the first thing I had to learn to fix, that you have to do black and white for Japan. You can't use colors, and you can't use gray even. You're not supposed to use gray. So the stuff that you see that looks like gray, I don't know, you see some gray up here. That's not gray. That's actually a screen tone. If you look closely, I'm not going to show you on there, but I think I showed it in some of the other videos. It's just a pattern of black or white dots or lines and things like that. Excuse me. Okay. So, but let's see. Yeah, so the other thing I had to learn was that this is 72 pages, right? And the story still wasn't finished, because I had this grand concept in my head of this big world I was going to make, sort of you know how you got Naruto and these One Piece and these series that just kind of keep going. I was thinking at the same time, I think I'm just going to make this really cool series, it's going to be really awesome and stuff. But the thing is that, I mentioned in my last video, but a publisher doesn't want to read that. They don't want to, they just want to sit down with you for maybe an hour, or maybe a little longer, and they want to just be able to read what you wrote, read your manga in maybe 5-10 minutes, and then they want to give you their feedback. That's sort of the way it goes. So if you have this really grand story that you're thinking of, they're not gonna be interested. They want something quick and to the point that shows that you can make a manga that can make a full, complete story. So you don't just give them one chapter of a bigger story. I mean, you can have potential for a continuation, but you really want to have one full story finished. Within probably about, gonna say 32 to 40 pages. Maybe you could do 24 or something like that too, but the first one that I actually took into a publisher was 16 pages, because the school told me that you can do that. Basically, they said 16 was a good starting point. I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'll get more into that in a minute. But okay, so that was what I did before I went to the school. And the second thing I did when I got to the school, that was the first thing I did before I went to the school. Then when I entered the school, the first manga that I did is this. This is just a 4-page introduction manga. This was just our first assignment, and obviously you can't bring this to a publisher. It's only 4 pages. I mean, it's probably not going to be that valuable for that, but it was extremely valuable as just sort of the entry point of getting into like drawing the manga. So like if, for example, you're not really sure how to get started, this is a good way to start. Just do 4 pages. Like this was the assignment here was, it was an introduction of, it was a self-introduction that you could do in any form you wanted. So like mine sort of like a fantasy style introduction, while other people did like just straightforward introductions, just saying like, hi, my name is this and that or whatever. But basically it was just something that you could show the class and be like, yeah, this is me, just so you guys know who I am, what type of manga I draw, how and stuff. Like, this is my little introductory manga, just 4 pages. And I learned a lot from this. I learned a lot about, well, I just can't say specific things, but just sort of like the feel of how to draw with using an inking pen. They're pretty strict about what you can use. I think I may have mentioned that before, but you can't use like any pen. You have to use specifically the sort of like what she calls it, stub. What are they called in English? Stencil? No, pen. Pens. In Japanese, pensaki, right? Do I have any here? Hold on a second. Yeah, these things. This is what you use. So it took a little while to get used to how to use these. You know, because you have to. There's no ink in here, so you have to like dip it into a bottle of ink, and then you attach that to well, you attach that to your stick or whatever, and then you dip it into ink, and then you draw with it, and you have to like exchange them every once in a while because they get blunted and stuff. But yeah, so then also just using the screen tone for the back, and maybe I'll try to get into more specifics about those two in the future. But for now, moving on. So that was the 4 pages I did for the first assignment, and then let's see here. I think this was the second manga that I drew. This is about 16 pages. This was actually using the same character from this series that I was doing before I went to the school, but I just tried to condense it into one contained story. And in case I probably mentioned this before, but in case you didn't know, when you do manga, you do it on these really big pieces of paper generally, and then this is shrunk twice. I guess it ends up being like 25% of the size, because this is B4. So then you split that half, that's going to be B3, and then you split that half again, that's B2? Is that right? Or is it the other way around? No, I'm sorry. This is B4, so then this is, half would be B5, half of that would be B6. And I think B6 is what the actual size of the manga is. So to avoid copyright issues, I'll try to not show you what manga this is, but here we go. Yeah, that's probably about 1/4 of it, I think. Yeah, so it gets shrunk into this size. Okay, so this was the first story I did in school. It was about 16 pages, maybe even 12, I'm not really sure. But let's see if I could talk about what I learned while doing this. So if you could look at this page, you can kind of see that it's pretty sparse. This is just like a big gray area. You have like some like gray and white here, and then this is all white over here, and this is all white here. You want to avoid that. You want to have a fairly well balanced like composition. Like, I don't know if composition is the right word, but when you look at your page from afar, even without paying attention to any of the contents or anything, or actually what's being drawn, you want to have like a sort of rhythm of black and white area. You don't want it to be like just this. There's this big white area and there's this big gray area and all this other type of stuff like that. Like let me see if there's actually a page in here that's actually done well. This is the first one I did, so a lot of these are really not that great. That's still not very good. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is getting a little bit better. You have like you have the black borders and stuff, and you have this monster coming out here, and every single panel has like a fair amount of detail and white space and stuff. Now, honestly, this is still really not that great. If I were to go back into this, I'd probably want to put more detail in the different areas into here to kind of like bring out the background from the foreground and things like that and give more depth to it. So this really still isn't that good, but this is probably the best one out of this manga. But we'll see about other mangas if there's anything better in there. Yeah, so that was the first one I did. And I didn't take that into publishers or anything because it was just my first thing. This was my first year of school, and just kind of like an experience of learning from drawing that. And now my second one. So you see this gray stuff? That's screen tone, and I may have mentioned that before, but this is something that's kind of attached to the paper. I don't know if you can see this, but like, see, it's like this like tone that you attach to the paper, and then you cut it out to make different sections, different tones and things like that. And I really hated using that. So I noticed that there are some mangas that don't really use a lot of tone. I don't think Naruto actually even uses. I don't think Naruto really uses a whole lot of toning. Because a lot of if you look at a lot of the character designs, it's very stark, like black and white, like the clothes that they wear, like this section would be black, this section would be white, this section would be like maybe crosshatch or something, and so that way they can kind of avoid tone because like they aren't really worried about the shading so much. So I was trying to figure out, maybe I could figure out a way to do a manga that doesn't have any tone. So this is the second one I did, and I don't think I used any tone in this. I'd have to double check just to be sure, but like, oh, okay, I used very, very slight amounts. Like here I have like a little gradation here on the top, but for the most part it's just using strong areas of black. And like, I'm not really doing it particularly well at this point, but this is something I learned that was really helpful, is using very dark black areas. It helps a lot to kind of bring about a better balance to your page. So, and once again, this is still my first year of school. These are not particularly great examples, but so you can see what I was trying to do here. So, you know, my last one you saw there was like really sparse white areas and just some gray areas. I was trying to avoid that in here by having every frame have like really dark blacks and whites and have like very strong contrasts in each frame. And I mean, that it could work. It could be an effective method. I don't know if I really was doing it that well here. I mean, there is something to this style. Like, I guess it kind of has its own type of feel to it, but I don't know. It still feels like maybe there's not enough going on in the backgrounds. It's still very much just like, and it is kind of balanced. You got blacks and whites, kind of like there is this bit of a rhythm here, but it's still, there's a lot of sparse areas that just are like at wasted empty space, and I guess you kind of want to avoid that. You want all of the spaces to actually like serve to enhance the manga panel, and not just be that you needed some space there, so you just leave this big white area open or whatever. Yeah, but so that was the second one I did, and I didn't take that into to any publishers either. That was just my first year, just messing around. And I think this was also probably 16 pages. This might actually be 24. I'm not completely sure, but anyways, the third one I did. That's the first one I brought to a publisher, and that's the main thing I want to talk about today. This is Optimus, and it's based off of a character that my friend played in Dungeons and Dragons type game that we used to play back in the day. So I wanted to kind of bring his character to life. I really don't like this front page. Like his face just kind of out of proportions and stuff. But this is the first time where I actually started getting a feel of like how to do the drawings, and like I'm using a kind of a balance of like cross hatching and tone work and things like that. And I think I'd like to show you a little bit more detail of this. So let's go ahead and bring it up on the computer screen. I have a scan of it so you can check that out. So come on. Okay, so here we are inside of my computer, and this is the scanned copy of Optimus. And we're going to open up from the first page, or well, rather the second page, but the first page after the cover page. You may also notice that I was talking about making your mangas in amounts of, say, 16 pages, 21 pages, 32 pages, 40 pages, and the reason for that is that you want your cover page to open from the left side. So if this is if this was a comic and you had how do we show this? I'm not quite sure how to illustrate this, but okay, so like the cover is going to be on the left side of if there were 2 pages open here. The left side would be the cover. I wonder if I could illustrate this somehow. Hold on a second. So you kind of see here if this is how the pages are going to open. This is the first page. This is the second page. Japanese comics go from right to left. So your cover is going to be here. So like on this right side, that's going to be the end of the whatever comic is before yours in the actual magazine. And then this would be your cover, and then you open the cover, and then that's your first layout like this. So this would be page 1, and then this is now page 2, page 3, counting each. We're saying that page 1 is going to be your cover, so that's page 1 is your cover. Then you have page 2, page 3, and then you go through and continue like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then so like. The last page is going to be the opposite. The last page is going to be like this. So it's going to be on the right side, but the last page is going to be on the right side, and then you're going to leave the left side empty for another comic to come in. So that's why we do in denominations of like 16, 24, 32, because those all kind of end up in this way where the first page of your cover is opening from the left side and the last page is on the right side. And so that's just sort of the logic between those numbers. So now going back to the story of Optimus, I'm going to go through some of the basics of how the plot went, because when you bring your manga to I've been saying publish all this time. It's actually not a publisher. So for example, this is the manga that I brought to Jump, and now Jump is the magazine. The publisher, I believe, is Shueisha. Let me double check real quick. Let's see here. Jump, Shueisha だったよね。Yeah, Shueisha is the publisher for Jump. You also have like Kodensha and a bunch of other different publishers, and each publisher has their own thing. So Shueisha is the publisher for Jump magazine, Young Jump magazine, and like I think there's also like Ultimate Jump, or like well, basically all the Jump stuff. All the Jump magazines are published by Shueisha. Yeah. So getting back on topic though, this is Optimus. This is the third manga I did while I was in school, and it's the first manga I actually brought into a magazine within the publisher. In this case, it was Jump magazine, and the publisher was Shueisha. So what was it like? Well, I told you last week about how you make the phone call to set up the meeting, and like basically you look in the Jump magazine, you get it from the convenience store or whatever, and in the first opening cover it will have a number like written somewhere like in the credits area. There will be like a number to call, and you just call that number and you tell them that you'd like to bring your manga in for them to see. In Japanese we call it mochikomi. So you'd just be like, mochikomi shitai desu kedomo, I forgot exactly what I said, but like you just tell them that you'd like to bring your manga into the into the company, and then they'll ask for your information. Like they'll ask you how many pages it is, and I think they might ask you like what your name is or something like that, but nothing really that big. Just like maybe like what type of manga it is and how many pages. You might have to answer those 2 questions, and then they'll make an appointment. You want to make sure you have a couple different days. You don't just say like, oh, I can only bring it on this Tuesday at 4:23 p.m. in the afternoon. You know, you don't want to be too specific. You just want to be like, you want to have like a couple days listed up, so you could be like, well, I can meet you any day between Monday and Friday from after 6 o'clock or something, and then they'll work it out. Like, okay, we can fit you into this slot. So then they get your schedule. They get you scheduled in there, and they bring you in. And well, they don't bring you in. You go in, and you go to the counter and you tell them that you're there for mochikomi, and you ask for whoever it is who is going to see you or whatnot that day, and then they come down and they meet you. And my friends had some difficulties with Jump. One of my friends, he like mentioned that they were very strict, and like basically just told him like he should try to continue practice drawing a little bit, and if he doesn't get any better, then he should just quit, because he probably won't be able to make it. And that was like kind of a shock for him. So I've heard stories about them being very strict. For me though, I didn't really have any particular issue. The guy that I met was a fairly young guy. He kind of had like a punk type style to him. He was wearing a lot of like jewelry, and he had like long hair and everything. He was probably about the same age as me, more or less. And well, what they do is you sit down, he'll greet you, and then you just take out your manga, like the big B4 size thing that I showed you before, and you hand that over to them, and they take it and they read that in front of you. So when they're not just looking at your art, they're looking at the story as well. So that's why, to begin with, I think I just want to give you a quick rundown of the story here. This is 16 pages, I believe. So let's just see. Basically, you had your cover, and then you open up from the cover, and this is the first actual page of the story. And here we have Optimus here, facing down 3 opponents, who he then swiftly moves forward to take out one by one, leaving just one guy there at the end. And this guy, in his shock of how quickly he took out the other 2 people, he's like, who the hell are you? What's your name? And then Optimus, he replies, me, I am Optimus, the great, or the wonderful, or I forgot exactly what I had written there, but he just talks about, like, I am the great and mighty Optimus. And then he lifts up his sword and brings it swiftly down into a bush. And that's when you realize that this actually was just sort of something in his imagination, and in actuality, he was there with a wooden stick fighting bushes and trees in the forest. And so, like, this was his sort of like his introduction. He's telling that I'm Optimus and everything, and I would have liked to have told you that I was a great and mighty warrior, but the truth is I'm still young, and I'm still trying to find my way in the warrior path. But he fights hard every day, and he's determined that he's going to be a great and mighty warrior. So he says the first step in his journey is he's going to have to find an opponent. So he looks over there to this little like bar pub thing that they have over there, and he walks in, and he sees this big guy who's named Cordial. He's like a half giant, so he's fairly large, and he's talking to everyone, and everyone's gathered around listening to his story of all the adventures he's had. And he's talking about this one day when he was out in the forest, and there was a number of trolls that he ran into. And he said, like, these trolls, they were so big and scary, and they wanted to eat him alive. But Cordial took out his mighty hammer called the Braggermire. That's the name of the hammer. So he takes out the Braggermire, and he brings it crashing down upon their head, and dust smote them, or something around those lines. So he's bragging about how great he was. And so then, in the midst of that, Optimus, he comes in, and he says, oh, that sounds grand. I'd love to test you in battle. And after he says this line, Cordial, he just continues his story and says, like, it's like, yeah, it was a very difficult battle fighting the trolls, and he just continues going on about him and the trolls.
So Optimus is a little upset because no one seems to be paying attention to him. So now he musters up the biggest voice he can, and he shouts out like, "Hey you, I want to fight you! I challenge you to a duel," or something along those lines. And at that point everyone is just kind of awkward. There's an awkward silence as no one knows exactly how to react to this. But after initial kind of surprise, Cordial smiles and says, "Sure, that sounds like a grand idea." And so he takes his hammer and goes out into the forest, and they all gather around to see this great fight. So there's this big... at the beginning, Optimus, he's not doing so well. He's kind of getting manhandled by Cordial. Cordial's like grabbing his wooden sword and like kicking him down onto the ground. But Optimus is determined not to give up. So he goes at it again. He bears his he tries to block the Braggermeyer with his little wooden sword, but the Braggermeyer smashes right through it. So there it is, breaking through and hitting him down. And once again, Optimus is down for the count. But he will not give up. He gets back up again, and he says, "I'm not going to give up. I have to do this. I have to become a grand warrior." And he's examining his opponent. And he's like, "Okay, so this guy, he's really big, he's really strong, but I'm faster." So he moves in with his speed, and he strikes him just in the right way to make him drop his hammer. He points the half of a wooden sword that he has left at his throat and says, "Kimata," which is sort of like, I guess, "I win." And so, Cordial, being the good sport he is, he says, "Yes, you are the victor." And he takes him by the shoulder and says, "This is a fine warrior. It's your victory today." And he announces to everyone there how great a victory it was. And you see Optimus kind of shining in glee because of the way this recognition that he's getting from this, because it's sort of like what he's been after the whole time. And so the two of them become friends, and they go to the bar, and they start talking about teaming up and things. And this is sort of the beginning of how they're going to team up and move on into the future, being like a pair. So that's like the basic story. And so what was the so after the editor read this, what was his response? Well, he read through it in about like maybe 5 minutes, probably about the same amount of time that I just spent reading it now. And then he said, like, well, there was two things, maybe 2 or 3 things that I remember him commenting about. First one was that the story was a very simple story. There wasn't a whole. It was, these guys fight, and these guys meet up and they fight, and it's just sort of like a brawl type thing. And so it's very simple. There's not much to it. And so it's hard to really tell like exactly how good of a writer I am, and how good I am at making story, just from this small scene. And he mentioned that 16 pages is really hard to produce an effective story in just 16 pages. So I asked him, well, how many pages do you think would be good to bringing into to editors in the future? And he said, like, yeah, probably like, I'm pretty sure he said 24, at least 24 pages, no more than 40. So that's sort of the rule that I kind of tried to stick to after that. I do know that there was someone in my class that they got their tanto, that's the manager, from just a 16-page manga. But that's kind of a rare thing. That particular person, it was sort of like a comedy type manga, and it was, I don't know, it was just executed very well. So I say that there are exceptions, but for the most cases, 16 pages isn't really enough to get a really established story. So I'd recommend like at least 24 pages maybe. You don't want to go more than 40 because once again they don't want to read a novel. And the other thing was the style. So my drawings are kind of influenced by like old school D&D, like TSR, and like the old like fantasy art type of stuff. So like in terms of manga, I'd say there's some like influences from like Berserk or Vagabond, just more of a realistic style. And Jump is shonen manga, and shonen manga is generally targeted toward younger boy, like I don't want to say child, but like young boys. That's what shonen means. So shonen manga is targeted toward young boys. You have shoujo manga is targeted toward young girls. Seinen is targeted toward young adults. So Jump is for a younger audience. So he suggested that since my style isn't really sort of like the cartoonish type of anime, it's more of like a slightly more realistic type of style. He suggested that I should go to Young Jump instead of Jump. So I kind of took that and I decided that I would try to go to Young Jump in the future. I wasn't ready to go there yet. I still wanted to go to other places and get more advice and try to make a better manga first, because this still was just very rough. I mean, I'm looking back at these faces and some of these, they just aren't quite the best proportions and like facial expressions and stuff. But that was a very encouraging comment, because it sounded like it was basically him saying like, I don't think you're good for Jump, but you may be good for Young Jump, and that was kind of encouraging. Like, hey, so he actually thinks I should go and talk to someone in this other, and once again, Young Jump, that's part of Shueisha. That's just it's the same publisher, it's just a different magazine. So Young Jump is more for adult audiences, or young adult audiences, I guess I should say. But trying to think of an example. Do you guys know Gantz? I'm not sure how big that is over outside of in abroad, but it's Gantz. There's an anime. There's a manga. There's even a movie, but I'm just not sure how big that is outside of Japan. But like that, yeah, that's from Young Jump. Other things like Berserk and Vagabond and like other things like that. Blade of the Immortal are also probably seinen manga, even though those wouldn't be Jump. They're probably different things. But yeah, in general, the magazines, if it says young on it, that means young adult. If it doesn't say young, it's probably shonen. It's probably the younger boy. So young boy is like Jump. What else is there for young boy? I don't know. But then you have young Jump is young adults, and then you have like young magazine, young animal, young, and then all these other things. Everything that has young on it is gonna be for adults. But you could just look at the magazines, see what magazines have a style similar to you, and try to shoot for that magazine. I think that was one thing that I did at the beginning, is I just went to any magazine I could, and I probably ended up going to a lot of magazines that my art really just wasn't a good fit for, and like my style and like the genre just wasn't a fit for. So you kind of want to research and see which magazines have the type of genre that would be correct for your particular art. And that would be easier to do in Japan probably than in the States. I mean, I guess you go through websites and stuff, but in Japan it's really easy. You just go to a convenience store or go to a bookstore or whatever, and just look at all the magazines that they have laid out, just flip through them and be like, oh, this one looks like the stuff I draw. So then you just flip over to the cover, the inside cover, and look for the phone number, jot that down, maybe take a photo or whatever, get home, call that number and say, hey, I'd like to bring my manga into you. It's really extremely easy. It was surprising how simple it was to meet up, to be able to have not interview, have a appointment with these editors. So that was pretty cool. I think that's pretty much all he had to say. There's also some like stuff with like actual just the drawings, I guess, that I could go over real quick. Excuse me, pardon me. Let's start from the beginning. So you can see I'm starting to get a little bit more balance with in terms of using blacks and like having the balance between the darks and lights and the sort of screen tone work, so that like if you see the top panel is pretty well, the whole panel is used up. There's no real empty space there. There's a little empty space in the middle one, but like that's not a particularly important panel. I probably could have done more like in the background toward the bottom, because it gets kind of empty toward the bottom, so it's kind of top weighted. But it's getting better than the stuff I did in the past. And there are things just to keep a strong outline is important. This one, all the proportions here are really messed up. This is not a really good page. But let's see here. Oh, also you can see like the action lines. These are really important too. You see all the sort of action lines in the background, in the back of that panel, to kind of make sure that if you don't want to draw a full-on background, at least have like some action lines or something to kind of like fill up the space and kind of add to the feel of the panel. And there's a lot of also methodology about how you do your panels. Like for example, in this action panel, you see that all the lines that break up the panels, they're all like the frames and stuff. They're all like kind of diagonal, and they're all like diagonal, like popping out in weird directions and stuff. So that's like just showing that this is an action. This is like stuff. A lot of stuff is going on here. It's like fast paced and everything, and it's not it's not a stable situation. Things aren't stable. Things are like there's like swords being flown around and everything. But now here, when you get back to this really stable, simple, like he's actually just fighting bushes and stuff. Now this isn't action anymore. Now we're calming things down. So now all the frames are very rectangular. There's lots of straight, just very what's the word? Not these. This is dynamic. This is whatever the opposite of dynamic is. It's just very simple. It's calm, I guess. And so then now we're still on the talking. So this is all calm. But then here, when Optimus comes in and issues his challenge, we start bringing some more diagonals in there, some more dynamic stuff. And then once we get back to the fight scenes over here, you get more diagonals, and you have more like frames that are popping out of the background, and like frames that are on top of backgrounds and stuff. Like all the more dynamic like work comes in here. And you can see here in this middle section where he's being kicked. First, like you don't want there was a lot of background space, and if you just kept that white, it wouldn't be very impactful. So you have the once again you have the action lines and also just hints of the background. So you don't have to draw the whole background all the time, but you want to have just a little hint so that sort of like passively the viewer can see that in the corner of their eye and be like, okay, so this is in the forest. I could see the little trees on the sides and stuff. And the other important thing is that you're keeping the outline of the character very clear. You don't want to have a whole lot of stuff interfering with the outline of the characters. You see here how the area around them is left white, so that you can still see that you can still differentiate the character from the background. That's another important thing that I learned. And it's also important to try. I don't know how well I did it in this particular manga, but you want to try to have the outline of the character be a stronger line than the lines that are within the character. That may have been something I started doing in later mangas. I'm not quite sure. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, this one's still about the same. But like, yeah, generally you want to have a stronger outline around in the silhouette of the character, and then the stuff that happens inside the actual silhouette of the character, you want to have thinner lines there, so that it keeps a very strong. I kept saying outline, but I think the better word is silhouette. You want to have a strong silhouette for your characters. And then just facial stuff. I mean, there's some proportion errors with the way that their eyes are placed and things. Like there's a lot of stuff that could be fixed. But in terms of just like, I don't know, like this is a pretty good page. I mean, you look at the top and you see like the really well filled out background there on the top panel, and on the bottom panel too you have him talking about the adventure with the trolls. That's pretty well done, I believe, too. And so when you have something like this where the top and the bottom are both very, very detailed, you can get away with having less detailed in the middle sections too, you know. It's all about just striking a balance. I'm not going to say that this is a really particularly well done manga. This is only the third one I did, and it was still, I mean, I'd only done like maybe 30 pages of manga at this point, like within the school. So like I think I'm going to honestly, the first 100 pages or so of manga that you draw is probably going to be crap. It's just unavoidable. Everyone has a sort of amount of crap that's just stuck inside of them that you just have to get out. And then once you get that out, then that's when the good stuff starts coming out. So I would say, yeah, get at least 100 pages under your belt, and then you'll probably be in good shape to bring your stuff out to a lot of different editors and stuff. And I mean, you don't have to wait till 100. Like I took this to an editor, but honestly, like I probably didn't have a good chance of getting a manager with this one. It's still pretty simple.
Okay, so that was Optimus, and we still have many more pages of stuff. After I finished Optimus, I spent a lot of time on this one here. This is a lycanthropy. It's like a story of like a werewolf, and this one I think is about 40 pages long. And I have another one here that's about 32. So after the experience with Jump, I tried to make sure that I always did at least like 32 pages. At the very least, I did 24, I think, sometimes, but usually I was shooting for like 32, 40 pages. You probably don't want to go much higher than that. You don't want to do like 50 pages and stuff unless you really have a relationship with the person. He is willing to invest the time in you, but generally, if you're just going there for the first time, they're not going to want to read that big of a value. So I don't know, maybe I'll go into these more in future videos, or maybe I might go into some of the actual specifics of how to draw different parts of the, like, different techniques that they teach you in the manga school. But I think that's enough for Japan Quest episode 6, and I guess this is now kind of becoming a manga workshop as well, but I will figure out how we're going to organize those two videos. But yep, so thanks for watching. See you again next time. Yoroshiku.